Yo, we are so back, Adam. We're here on the live stream. We finally figured it out.
It's funny how, you know, you get into this stuff and we're like, oh, it's probably the dongle, it's this, it's that. And then it's like you finally like take the time to like search, which we did. I mean, I did search like ChatGPT and stuff, but you searched and found like the StreamYard where they're like, oh no, everybody should tick, you know, no noise cancellation or something. And that solved it. It was like, really? We had that clicked on for the last year and a half. And then like today we forgot to, I mean, it's like, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
I can't wait for the AIs. The AIs cannot come quick.
So I think what it is when I'm hosting it, you need to have it clicked on, but when it's just you, then you have it clicked off so the sound isn't fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Just the small things. I have sent out a bunch of requests for people to come on stage. I do encourage the Namecoin community, even if you don't want to speak, to just come and hang out. If not, then Adam and I will continue to share the story of Namecoin. I think this is our first ever Namecoin space, actually. Have we hosted one?
Oh, that's impossible, bro.
Have we? Maybe it's been like a year or so.
We've done like puny codes before, for sure, 100%, man. I mean, Devoted, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we've definitely done. Have I lost my mind? If we haven't done Namecoin spaces before? We've definitely done Namecoin spaces.
I can't remember. Devoted, do we ever do one?
Yeah, I'm sure we've done a couple of them, especially after the Puny Code was launched, and then a few others after that. The bit domains and like a few have been hosted from it, as far as I can recall.
Awesome. All right. It's been so long, but I'm really excited that we finally get to have this. Although it is a little bit tough to wrangle all you guys up into singular space. If there's one community that is hard to do, this one is it. But I have pinned to the top the spaces. I'd love for everybody to retweet it so that some people can come in and join the conversation, or a lot of them will come in later. I also did pin the migration announcement so that everyone can kind of see what's going on there. We will send out a Twitter eggs one here in a little bit to really wrap it up. We'll also go through some conversations and overview some of the collections. I know there's some metadata things or some unique kind of aspects, but overall, I would say a much large success here. Adam, you still with me?
Yeah, I'm here. But can you hear me? All right.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay.
We just our power we got a massive power surge, so
boy,
my camera's down. But my mic's still working, and so I'm here. If anything, if I fully die, I'll just jump on the space.
Chill. Yeah. So we're trading spaces this time around. So a little bit of a recap of what happened here over the last year or so. Emblem Vault, we started our migration back in July of 2023 with the intention to migrate 50,000 or so NFTs to 40 individual collections. Turns out it was a much more difficult process than we had imagined. But here we are today, 13 months later, with the successful completion. The Namecoin collection alone, I would say, took up more time than all of the other protocols combined. Like, I'm not even joking here. And so we had to create images for, the non-standard image collections like puny codes, .bit, and .id. Had to find out all the unique cases, also working with Namecoin, right? And then there was the auto renew feature, but we'll get into kind of all of that. But I would like to first start off and talk with Devoted Man. How have you been? How's the puny codes community hanging in there?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for hosting this space. It's like been a long while since we had basically any discussions regarding Namecoin out in the public. And well, yeah, since like as far as the community is concerned, so yeah, obviously, like most of the I guess this would be the case with most of the historical communities. The general chat, you could say, or some of those channels that are usually out there for just the general conversations, those have been a bit less active overall. But yeah, when it comes to, like, for example, in the Puny Codes Discord, we have a holders alpha channel. So like that's been like almost like there's conversations like almost on a daily basis, like we're just discussing alpha, what's going on in the entire market, when it can be compared to anything, like whether it be ordinals or anything, just degens being degens. So yeah, like we have been like active in those particular channels a lot, almost like a couple of dozen people, I would say. And apart from that, and like I guess everyone was really happy that finally everyone has been waiting for a long time for the Emblem Walls curated collections to be completed. And like it took a long while, but I guess it does with all of the, like, basically any kind of developing work. And I completely understand how hard it is, especially migrating a collection, migrating all of those, the earlier vaults into a new one. And it's also a high risk activity, you could say, migrating the assets from the old vaults to the new vaults. So thanks a lot to the Emblem team for that. And yeah, like it's been pretty well. And finally, like you could say all of the historical NFTs have their own dedicated landing page on most of the marketplaces now. So yeah, excited to see how it goes moving forward. And especially the bull run is just starting, so let's see how those caters to the historical NFTs.
Yeah, we did miss the first kind of pop, the initial component of the bull run, but that's okay. We are here today.
It actually feels like we were just on one of Mario's spaces, Jake and I, talking about our NFTs back. I mean, it feels like over the last couple of weeks on the timeline, NFTs have gotten some traction and are kind of, I don't know if it's a combination of meme coin burnout and punks just like popping a little bit or whatever, but it feels like actually we could catch some some tailwinds here, feel in the NFT space in general.
Yeah. It's interesting now because the NFT community is really bifurcated between Bitcoin, ETH's L2s, and Solana. But Emblem's been trying to abstract all the chains away since 2020 and even long before that. So we're really ahead of the curve, and everyone's going to catch up here over the next few years. Chain left. I have not talked with you for a long time, man. How have you been, brother?
Good. Yeah, it's just a pleasure to be here. I'm good. Yeah, just a little more, I guess, focused on in real life, but also still working on a few NFT projects myself. But yeah, it's been otherwise good. I missed you guys as well. How are you doing?
We're doing good, man. I'm excited that migration's finally coming to an end here, and we can finally move on and figure out what's next for the Namecoin community. This is kind of like one of the points of this conversation, and Adam and I had this conversation recently with Counterparty and also with Stamps. Is that do these historic assets ever become something more? Like, does the community have any intentions to build anything on top of it, or will it always be a novelty? And how do we share awareness for Namecoin? At the end of the day, I have had actually somewhat interest of people poking around the Emblem Discord, kind of asking about Namecoin, trying to figure out how to mint on it. I've had some people ask about how do you inscribe on Namecoin, and it's really kind of interesting perspective. But just to kind of start off the top for maybe some people who aren't aware of what Namecoin is, Chain Left, could you describe a little bit of what Namecoin is, and then what's unique about these assets that are I guess registered is the correct word, registered on Namecoin?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. I think a lot of people can do that as well. But yeah, for me, so Namecoin is the first altcoin. It's come in 2011, early 2011. It was originally proposed in Bitcoin Talk forums. Some ideas had been discussed. Satoshi was included in those conversations as well. It's actually, I think, the only altcoin who he has had some not coding contribution, but just generally like a conversational and idea level contribution to. And then basically at that point, it got launched as a decentralized domain name registrar. So essentially precursor to ENS, you can think of it that way. But what is, I think, special about Namecoin is, obviously, yes, there is this DNS utility, and that functionality does work within the Namecoin network itself, but it's not very popular. So it's not like ENS where you can do a lot of things with ENS now, because it's ENS itself is integrated into the entirety of Ethereum dApps. That's not the case with Namecoin, and that's why that DNS functionality is not utilized a lot, but the functionality is there. If it sees adoption, it would work essentially. But what is actually really special about Namecoin is that it's the first time that it allowed this this decentralized structure of custom data ownership, right? Because any DNS or any domain name is essentially a name. It's a string with a limitation, obviously, but it's a string, right? And if someone can own a string, that means that it's the first time you own something custom, not like you don't own with Bitcoin, you own these sats, like Satoshis or Bitcoins themselves, but they are fungible. With Namecoin, it was the first time that someone actually made something that is non-fungible and that can be owned in a decentralized manner. And that was, I think, what really, got people really excited and do something interesting with it. With Namecoin, I think you start seeing all these first experimentations that you see in the entire blockchain space, right? So you see these experiments around not just its own original utility of DNS, but experimentation around art, experimentation around on-chain storage, even messaging ideas, messaging service ideas, lots of identification ideas. So there are a lot of those interesting things, experiments that were done on Namecoin, and a lot of those have been either adopted or completely started from scratch by the upcoming communities right now, right? So now we have all these much more advanced technologies, but the first experiments of a lot of those things were done on Namecoin. I think that's what makes it really interesting.
Yeah, there's some really interesting questions on the YouTube stream right now, where people are asking, well, what about the real BNS? And they're like on Stacks from Munib Ali, right? And it's like, I'm kind of chatting with them in the stream, but it's like, so people don't understand that Munib started the project on Namecoin, right? Later migrated it over to Bitcoin, but it was actually started on Namecoin. And it's part of this like really cool history of like Namecoin has this like first mover. They tried it here, right? It didn't really work. People were concerned about, Munib says he was concerned mainly about the security of Namecoin. And, obviously would prefer to have it on Bitcoin natively, would be kind of ideal. And obviously that has transformed into, Stacks. But the original project was on Namecoin, which is part of this really interesting history.
Yeah, so I have here pulled up nmc.vision. This is a really good explorer for Namecoin. The team behind this did a really good job. And from the Emblem perspective, just to clarify, there's 6 collections that you can go and purchase assets from. You have the .bit, which is the first quote unquote NFT collection. I believe the first ever NFT created is Bitcoin.bit, which was registered, I believe, April 21st, 2011. I believe there was like 5 or 6 domains that were registered in the same block at that time. And then there, shortly after that, you had .id, which is identities. This would be something similar to like sign in with ENS, or at least this was the early attempt. That was started in 2012. And then you have puny codes as well. So the first puny code was also, I believe, in 2011, which is I guess it's called the puny code, where you put it into a converter and it spits out like emojis and different types of names. This is what I have here on the screen here. It's almost like secret messages in essence. Some people classify this as the first ever tokenized art because there is art on the other side, but it looks like a bunch of random numbers and letters at the end of the day here. So you can see it's XN-1XA and it spits out a pi symbol. And then in 2014, you have in 2014, one name was created, which Adam had noted was created by Munib, who's the founder of Stacks. And this was the first time you could basically link images inside of the Namecoin record, which is similar to a metadata field. So this is where they say the first ever tokenized images intentionally. And so Emblem supports 2 of these collections called Twitter Eggs, which is where users could tokenize their Twitter PFP through Namecoin. Turned out there was, I believe, like almost 300 of these Twitter eggs that were registered. These were all done individually and under people's own accord. And later, digital archaeologists like Adam and some other individuals, went back. I believe Adam wasn't first to Namecoin, but went back and found, a lot of a grouping or large similarity between all of these assets. So they grouped it together and called it Twitter Eggs because that was the most popular default Twitter profile picture ever. I believe it lasted from 2010 to 2017. I'm trying to pull from my history knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, it's
history
interesting
here.
that part. People love the default. The Twitter egg was really kind of this cool part of like internet history, right? That, you know, Twitter had these kind of beautiful eggs as your default. Now, if you get, you know, your default Twitter on, or your default picture on Twitter is kind of like the shadow of a person look, not nearly as cool as the eggs. So if you used you know, Munib service back then, you got, and you didn't have a picture set up, you got the default egg picture, which is kind of cool. And obviously then people, you know, did the blockheads, which if somebody knows the story better than I do, feel free to come up on stage and, you know, we can talk about blockheads and how that all happened as well. But basically these were the PFPs people were using at the time on Twitter. So there was this generator, as far as my understanding goes, which allowed you to kind of generate these kind of blockhead style PFPs in the way we would think about, you know, like a CryptoPunk or just kind of an animal or whatever you're using as your PFP on Twitter. And when they did use the service, you know, that's why we get these kind of blockhead PFPs. And from a collectability standpoint, it's kind of interesting.
And there's some few other collections as well. And also for blockheads, I believe it's a collection of 42. The original images were created from an 8-bit generator. 8-bit's super popular, or was an early avatar creator. An avatar creator is how you created PFPs before they existed on the blockchain. And I believe Matt and John, even who created CryptoPunks, were involved with an early avatar generator, which some of those images actually ended up being registered on Namecoin. I believe there's maybe like, I believe 6 of them.
Yeah,
I'm gonna try to find that here somewhere on this screen. But then you also have some of these assorted collections. Like I have here put up QR codes. There's the Twitter eggs. There's identicons, which are from GitHub, and you have just a whole bunch of really different ones. And I believe the most popular collection at the time was something called Monograph, which this is the asset here I have pulled up on the screen. Monograph was created by, what was his name? Kevin McCoy.
Mhm.
Kevin McCoy. And so Monograph, there's a lot of history behind Monograph, where Kevin McCoy and I believe Anil, what's his name? Anil Dash.
Mhm.
They participated in a live hackathon, I believe. And this is when they created basically, or they created something called Monograph, which was essentially something like OneName, where you could mint images or register images directly into the Namecoin blockchain. And so this was the first image. And there's a lot of history and controversy, which is still actually being dealt with at this time, where this image here was sold at Sotheby's in early 2021. I believe it was the first NFT auction at Sotheby's, and they called this the first ever NFT. But at the time, they weren't selling the Namecoin record. They were selling the image that was reminted on Ethereum, and it sold for 1.4 million. And then the original claim, or the person who claimed this after the asset had expired, that goes by early NFT, which you could see here on the name record that I have here pulled up on screen, sued Kevin McCarthy for false advertisement, claiming that he owned it. I believe he lost that case, though. I believe Kevin McCoy won that case, although
Correct.
I think there is an appeal that's coming on. I actually did invite him to come on the show, and he said that his lawyers told him not to come on.
It's funny because I was just remembering, I was like, I think I sent a message, a DM to Anil Dash when I first like heard about, you know, the I think it was 7-on-7 conference or whatever, where he spoke, him and Kevin spoke. There's a video of him like launching it. Right. And I wrote him and I was like, I'm just looking at the DM right now. I'm like, heads up, you know, if you have access to that artwork, blah, blah, blah. And, he said, I was like, are you okay with me tweeting about it? And he's like, maybe hold off a bit. And he's like, I'd like to check with Kevin first. And then all of it went down. That was March 26th of 2021. It's kind of this like interesting, you know, history about it, you know, and then obviously they had let it expire and the rest is kind of history, but it's.
Dude, there's so many nuances to Namecoin. Like I've here pulled up the Blockhead collection, and you can see all of these. Some of these are u/tim, some are i/. Some of them have broken links to where the image is only accessible through the Wayback Machine, because where the image was originally linked to was a website, right, which is a central server.
Yep.
And so therefore that expired. And right, you also have to register these assets about every 8 months. And the reason why all this is so chaotic is because there wasn't a token standard, or there wasn't a NFT collection standard. It was literally individuals going to Namecoin and registering them on their own. And I think what a lot of collectors find value is that the kind of randomness of it, the randomness of it implies value, because there were, dozens or, maybe a few hundred individuals who were kind of circulating around the same idea, right, of registering 42 of these avatars from an independent platform to Namecoin. So there was a lot of controversy in the historical NFT space, right? Are they collections or are they not?
Yep.
Does the intentionality of it imply value, or does it make it, is it not an NFT, right? That's always one of the tough spots.
Expire. Oh my God, if it's expire. I mean, this is like, this is just, obviously we've talked about it a bunch. This is going to be, debated probably the rest of our lives, right? And that's fine. Like from a collectability standpoint, where the value lies and stuff, that's up to the individual collectors. But there's no question that this is like the first efforts at owning digital items, right? And yes, they made some mistakes. I mean, obviously the biggest mistake was that these things expire, right? But it's funny, like even today, right? Your .eth name expires as well, right? So what they were thinking back then of this idea of like, you shouldn't be able to squat on these, you should have to continue to pay into it or renew it or do whatever, was a common theme back then. This is like, and even today, it's still like, oh, this is the way it should be. For things like names. So I think, looking back, if I could have waved a magic wand or told, spoken those guys' ear, it would have been like, well, don't make these expire, right? Because that would actually match what we expect today of an NFT, of ownership of a digital item, is that you have true ownership, which is nobody can take it away from you. That's what we expect. But still, like, you from a historical perspective, it's certainly the first kind of baby steps into this idea of ownership of digital items. And I think that's what makes it, we all agree, pretty interesting.
Mr. Planet Profit says I'm so confused. Honestly, it took me a long time to really kind of figure out what's going on here. Yeah. It's also, so here on screen, I have Androidify pulled up.
Those are the ones, right? Yeah.
These are the ones that were created by the CryptoPunks founders. But so basically what happened here, to try to put it simply, Androidify was a avatar creation platform. So you would go to androidify.com, you would create the image through their image generator, and then users took that image and went to Namecoin and registered it to the blockchain through OneName or through Monograph, which were the two kind of minting platforms. They'd be kind of the equivalent of an inscribing service that you see on Bitcoin at the time. But this was so novel because people had to literally build this out and kind of figure it. And when you look through history, you start seeing the same trends kind of populate. It happened, same thing on when ordinals popped up. They were like, okay, we have to make this simple for users. You need like a consumer facing product to help users come in and start creating, all of these different assets. And there's actually a large variety. And it took the team who built NMT.vision years, multiple years, to literally go through the entire Namecoin blockchain and find all these assets, classify it, have the conversations, find the value, etc. I'm gonna pass it off. I'm gonna talk here to Chain Left and Devoted here in a second. But one other thing I'd like to note is Blockheads. They were the highest selling Namecoin assets in 2021, 2022. Some of them were selling at Emblem Vault for 80 ETH. So literally that's like when ETH was $4,000. So you're saying some of these are selling for, $250,000 at a time. And some Twitter eggs, I believe, were up around 80 ETH to the 100 ETH range. I believe 8-bit or blockheads may have been over 100 ETH as well. And of course, the value's largely plummeted. And there's all these different debates, but people still collect them. We're all, collectors kind of at the end of the day. So I'd love to pass it off to Devoted. First, before with your question, just tell me, like, what kind of value do you find in Namecoin assets that's led you to curating puny codes?
Yeah, sure thing. So, like as we were talking about the history itself of the Namecoin chain. So, to those people who don't know, so initially when like you would go all the way back to 2010, 11, there were, you can see, and you can just go back, you can open up the Bitcoin Talk forum website, and then you can see there were just conversations going on whether like there should be just one blockchain or we should experiment with other blockchains. All these conversations were going on around that time. So what had happened, I guess it was back around in 2010 or something, that the Wikipedia page on basically the Bitcoin page on Wikipedia, they had basically mentioned that it was a scam or something, and the government had taken down the Bitcoin official website or something of that consortium had happened back around then. And the initial idea of decentralized DNS, basically domain names that can't be taken down, that idea was spiked around that time. So organically, Satoshi and a few other developers of that time back in 2010, they began the idea of creating decentralized DNS on Namecoin. And also there was other conversations as well regarding real world assets, etc. The things that are actually about to be implemented at this point now in 2024, they were all being discussed back then. So Namecoin was concepted as the idea of decentralized DNS. In a similar fashion, there was another blockchain called Mastercoin. The idea was to create company shares, real world assets, all those things, and put them onto the blockchain. So these ideas are dated all the way back to 2010 and 2010, 11, 12, since then. And well, then after that, Ethereum emerged, the Ethereum white paper, and that was the idea of the first general purpose blockchain. Because as Muneeb said himself, the idea of these very chains, the security being at risk was a big issue. So Vitalik came up with the idea of a general purpose blockchain, a single blockchain that's programmable, and you can create whatever type of application you can on them. So that emerged from then, and that turned out to be a much successful idea rather than having different blockchains for different purposes. However, when it comes to the first assets, just like you could say the first watch or the first car or things of this consortium, these were on Namecoin, which started on the 21st of April back in 2011. So yeah, when as far as the collectability aspect of it goes, if you want to say what was the first artworks, which were the first collections where people actually express their creativity on chain onto assets that can never be destroyed. So yeah, that basically started on Namecoin. Since like within the first couple of weeks of the formation of the Namecoin blockchain, people started experimenting within the namespace and creating different kinds of assets. And some of the first were Punicodes. And the first Punicode were, Adam likes to call them binoculars, but other people would say they're the female reproductive organs. But yeah, well, the debate is open on that.
Devote, I have one question about the Emblem curated collection. There was somebody in the comments today that was saying there was some puny codes that were accidentally put in the .bit collection, or are they .bit? Can you, just while I have you here, does that look like a mistake, or are some puny codes actually .bits? I can't remember. It's been a while.
Yeah, so basically the Punicodes, how they have been created was that it's basically a Punicode is basically any asset that follows the X and dash criteria. So that's what creates a Punicode within the Punicode encoding language. And you could say the extension that was used for some Punicode was .bit, and on some was .d, or like there's basically as many extensions you want to create on Namecoin as you'd like. So there are some Punicodes that are also .bit domains. So in theory, they should be in the Punicodes language, into the Punicodes curated collection. But yeah, like they got into the .bit domains collection, because I think the .bit domains community, they would have shared you the Excel sheet of their particular assets that are in their collection. So they were right as well, because well, they are .bit domains, but I think they should be in the Punicodes collection instead.
Got it. Yeah. So there's these kind of situations exist in Namecoin. They also exist, excuse me, and counterparty as well.
For sure.
We had some people reaching out to us today saying, "Oh, there's these 2 collections in Saratobi, but they should be in Rare Pepe."
Yeah, we ran into this. I mean, we knew about this ahead of time, and we debated a lot. Like, what should we, the example might be Saratobi. There's some assets from Saratobi that are Rare Pepes, and they're also Saratobi. So it's like, where are we gonna put it? And so there is no perfect answer, right? What we're trying to do is give collectors the ability to basically jump between the two and put it where they prefer it on an individual level, but that might be a little bit of time before we have that implemented.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to do here, after we migrate all the assets, we have to work on all the metadata and the minting rules. This is like vaulting and unvaulting capabilities. And with the minting rules, we're enabling a feature that's called our jump feature, which allows you to take a puny code to Polygon, right, or Solana when we deploy there. But also there's intra jumping, where if a puny code is also a .bit, you can move the puny code between these 2 collections, right, or the general Namecoin collection. And so just for another example here, as Adam said, with Saratobi Pepe, even on X-Chain is classified to be in Rare Pepe and Saratobi. And so, but we can't have them both exist simultaneously on these 2 collections for security purposes, because you don't want them to be double spent. But we are working to have the ability to where, hey, if you want it in the Rare Pepe collection or you want it in the Saratobi collection, you have the ability to kind of, self jump in that capacity. So we are working on that. So appreciate everyone for, being patient. It's been a long time coming. I know it's been a tough process. There's literally thousands of edge case, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands.
If you guys see stuff that doesn't look right, just DM either Jake or I, or jump into the Discord and open a support ticket. Obviously, when we want to catch all these bugs, do go check your punies and stuff, or your Namecoin assets. Make sure it looks right and all that sort of stuff. What you'll see, if you haven't kind of gone in your wallet yet, you'll see now 2 NFTs. One's going to be empty, and then the other one's going to have your asset in it. But if you see any issues or something you think's an issue, please do hit us up. We want to make sure everything's fixed.
Yeah, and also make sure to register your assets. Just as a reminder, the auto renew feature is still in alpha. We do recommend to always set a reminder and renew, and use the auto renewal as a kind of fail safe. But there are some inconsistencies at times because of how Namecoin operates. But yeah, appreciate that. And our Cubes, man, I haven't talked with you a long time on Spaces, man. How you been? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite, and thank you for putting this together. It's really amazing what you guys are doing at Emblem Vault. The amount of effort and work that you've been putting into preserving these historical artifacts, right? If we all collectively believe that the blockchain is the future, right? The future rails of a financial system, the future of the internet. What Emblem is really doing here is helping us preserve those artifacts for the pleasure of others, right? This is not just about collecting assets and flipping assets. It's also about preserving the history that is the blockchain. So, one of the things that I wanted to kind of bring up is, this idea that Namecoin assets are questionable. Well, one of the things that I think about is, what exactly are we questioning? Because what we're talking about is the first fork of the Bitcoin blockchain with merge mining, right? And technology just wasn't there. Like, what we're talking about is trailblazers that were thinking about different ways to use the blockchain. And when we're talking about the first altcoin, I mean, people didn't consider then, what is an NFT, right? I think it was Vitalik was the first one that mentioned that, he really looked up to what the Namecoin team was doing as with the name IDs as being like the first non-fungible tokens, right? So I think that we don't give a lot of credit to where technology was back then, where our collective ideas were about how blockchains would be used. And what we have here with Namecoin are pioneers of technology that has then been further improved and refined. And I think that I almost equate it back to, like, Adam, you'll remember, right, when the curio cards were rediscovered. How long did it take before the punks, crypto punks, removed that they were the first NFT on Ethereum?
Months, bro.
Yeah, months, right? And how long did it take for people to wake up and go, "Oh my God"?
No, they're still not. They still haven't woken up. There are still people who think the first NFT ever. Like, yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that we need to expand kind of like what we consider to be early archaeological remnants of our, conscious of how blockchains will be used, and I do think that there is a space in this industry to allow namecoin assets to exist as the first examples of early NFT technology, early NFT art. I mean, you look at puny codes, right? They were writing in Unicode into this blockchain, and that's how we ended up with puny codes. Could we consider those early, historical archaeology or hieroglyphics, right? I mean, is that the same equivalent? So you look at Twitter eggs, right? When we talk about trailblazing, look at Twitter eggs. One name was the DApp that was created by Munib and Ryan, and they had the idea of, well, why don't we take IDs and allow people to take their Facebook, Twitter, GitHub profiles and register it on the blockchain with their information, append the metadata, append the images, and that's how we ended up with assets such as the Identicons or Twitter eggs, right? And even going further, on these assets like Twitter eggs, now that Twitter is now called X, right? There is no more eggs. So what we're leaving behind are remnants of, I guess what Twitter used to be, right, has been permanently memorialized on the Namecoin blockchain with those PFPs, those eggs. And, as you know, at EggsDAO, we're all about the eggs, right? And we really do think that they bring a high amount of uniqueness and value, when we think about historical assets. So I would definitely say that Namecoin, while there may be controversy, I think that is kind of people not allowing there to be an existence of early technology, and for us to memorialize and safeguard that technology. So to that end, I do want to thank the Emblem team and their dedication to the thesis, right? The White Rabbit thesis of these assets are historical and they need to be preserved. And I think the Emblem team exemplifies kind of that spirit, and do appreciate it, and I love what you guys are doing.
Appreciate it, man. Chain, if you want to pin up top, Chain's got probably some of the best writings on the subject about the idea, which is really the only controversy around Namecoin, is this idea of expiration, and then what happens to the token, and it wasn't even a token, and all this kind of like technical details. I think Chain's probably got the best writings on the subject. Chain, if you can find some of those old tweets, please pin them up top. So, anybody in the space who wants to kind of dive into the details, I think that's a great resource. Let's go to.
I'll tell you guys one thing, and I don't know if Chain will brag about this, but his paper that he wrote up on the Namecoin assets, I think ended up in part of the evidence as part of that legal case with what was it, Monograph.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was
happened.
the highlight of the last cycle, but it was pretty awesome.
It was funny. Yeah, that one was really funny. It became referred in I think the legislation, or not legislation, sorry, in the court case. I think it was referred there. But I mean, I think that debate is pretty much. I mean, it's just. It's so tiring, to be honest. I've gone into a lot of depths into like the technical side of it, the philosophical side of it, the collector or economic side of it. I mean, I don't know if anyone went that deep, but I think maybe Archivist did. After me, Archivist also released a lot of nice articles about the topic. And he went, actually, he discussed with the developers even at the time as well. He had some interviews, I think, even. So, you know, the expiration, I wanted to say in the beginning of the conversation when you were saying, Adam, that like if I had the chance to go back in time and tell to those guys that, oh, don't add the expiration, this guy would still add it, just to be clear. Even when we speak to even when we speak to these guys today, like these developers, they still, like, even those who would be very, you know, totally agree that like these are, you know, relevant assets, even those who subscribe to the thesis of historicalness and everything, they still are the defendants of that expiration system because they are vehemently opposing the squatting thing. So, you know, for them, that takes the priority like over everything else, and that's why they want the expiration to exist. They're in that philosophy, and again, I'm not saying I subscribe to that philosophy, but in that philosophy, I understand it, is what I'm trying to say. I guess in that philosophy, they're saying that, you know, expiration doesn't mean that you don't own the asset. You're still in full control of the asset. It's not like renting. You decide whether you want to expire or prolong. It's not like someone can just come and take it away from you if you decide to expire. The only thing that prevents that to happen is that if it expires, you know, if you let it expire or if you forget, essentially, then someone else can take it away. But you are the deciding agent, essentially. So it's your own asset still. That's what the philosophy goes, or that's how the philosophy goes. So yeah, that's the expiration thing. But beyond that, there is this conversation about whether an expiration actually kills the asset. I mean, I'm using the word very liberally here because there is a lot of, you know, definition people use. Oh, is it burning? Is it becoming a soulbound token, or is it becoming something else? I'm just going to use kill for now. It doesn't kill the asset based on the technical documentation, like based on the code. It really doesn't, because it uses the assets as the primary keys or primary identifiers of the entire chain. Just like, actually, I always use this analogy, and people get shocked when I use this analogy, but it's absolutely true. If that kills the asset, like if the provenance of the Namecoin asset is broken, I mean technical provenance, I just also want to be clear about that. If the technical provenance of the asset or technical originality of the asset is broken in Namecoin, then all the transfers in counterparty also break the technical originality of the asset. I just want to be very clear about this. It's a very shocking thing for people to hear, but the assets identification, essentially, in counterparty also happens through the consensus, like through the external consensus that we use on top of the blockchain. Like the blockchain itself, when you just look at the blockchain, the identifier of the assets are marked differently, both in counterparty and also on Namecoin upon transfers or upon expiration. But the originality is always tracked through a consensus that we do external to the stored database anyway. So when you have in Bitcoin Core, for example, you have a logic that says that, oh, you know, when the transfer happens, this is the same asset as the original one. So that's how you know that counterparty, like the rare paper that you transfer from one wallet to another, is still the same rare paper. You know it through an external consensus. I mean, it's not external because it's Bitcoin Core in the end, but it's external to the chain data, right? And that's the same in Namecoin. Like if you use the Namecoin core coding, you understand that the identifier of those assets are the names, not those UTXOs as we call. So when you use the same logic as you use in counterparty, those are still the same assets. So this is like, I'm just, you know, this is the logic in the end, but you know, it's a very long and very deep and technical conversation that gets sometimes blurred, you know, when people focus on one chain on another.
Yeah, it's the social consensus layer is what groups these collections together, whether it's on Namecoin or Doge Party or Counterparty, or even early ordinals was the same as well. They didn't add a metadata field until, you know, almost a year into the protocol's history. A few notes here, and then I'll pass it over to Everyday. Fractal Bitcoin, which is a really popular or emerging popular sidechain, notes Namecoin in its merged mining details. It says that their integration mechanism is identical to Namecoin. So even, what are we now, 13 years into this, new protocols that are, heavily funded by VCs are still mimicking and still following, the precedent that Namecoin set back then. Even Vitalik mentions Namecoin and its digital assets in the Ethereum white paper. You could literally find it in the white paper. And then, of course, Satoshi Nakamoto was one of the original people who suggested forking Bitcoin to create something called BitDNS. That was the original name of Namecoin. So it is just shrouded in history, started the merged mining trend, which as Adam has been leading this Bells movement, also just did a triple merge mine. And I'm sure Namecoin was brought up in that conversation.
100%, man. It's they were the first, and so yeah, it's I mean, we most of us in this space love the history of it, right? And so yeah, Namecoin has this really, really special place in all of blockchain history, right? It's yeah, whether you, I mean, most people I think fall on kind of our side, I would say, which is like, look, these are really cool historical assets. The value of it, we'll debate, but to think that they're not important or don't matter and only my rare Pepe bags matter, I mean, come on, it's not even an argument at this point in time. It's just, I think that the collectors have decided that this is important.
Yeah, and that the main distinction here, right? Because the assets expire, the provenance is maintained in the Namecoin record, the registration record, versus the token itself. And this is, it's largely a community decision. People can debate it, and that was kind of at the heart of it. But collectors are going to collect what they want, right? And people are going to form their value criteria based off of what they think is right. And that was why I started collecting Namecoin NFTs. That's how I got Jake.bit. Right, had expired. It was one of the first 500 digital assets to be registered, and expired. And I bought it off somebody, but there was one time it expired, I think a few years ago. And to me, I still see it as one of the earliest kind of quote unquote non-fungible digital assets that's ever existed. What's the value of it to me? I don't know if there is a price. I'm sure there is a price, but to me, I have no real intention to sell it unless there's some insane offer for it, because there's some personal relationship there. So I'd love to go over to Everyday, and they'll go to Devoted right after.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. Yeah, thanks, Jake, Adam, Chris. Thanks for hosting the conversation. So it's pretty fascinating.
No, is he breaking up?
Yeah, he's rugged, man. Dude, either get better Wi-Fi or just drop down and come back up. We'll get you back on again.
Yeah, Everyday, if you can hear me, just drop back down, and then
Can you hear me?
Not really.
Rugged, man.
Yeah, drop down and then come back up, and we'll bring you back up. Go ahead, Devoted.
Yeah, I would just mention the fact that as you were talking about the security aspects as well. So for those people who don't know, Namecoin is basically merged mined with Bitcoin. And as of right now, most of the miners are on Bitcoin, they use Namecoin as their merge mining pair. So as of today, and it has been this way for a long, long time, Namecoin is as far as the hash power is concerned of a blockchain. So it's one of the, you could say, one of the most secure altcoins out there. Yeah, sure, you could debate, well, there are other ways as well. You could basically attack a chain or something. But yeah, as far as the security of the assets on it is confirmed, and the security of the chain in general, it's one of the most secure altcoins out there. So it's not just because the chain hasn't been that much active as of today, that doesn't mean the security aspect of the chain or the assets on itself is at, you could say, risk or something.
Yeah, are there any other altcoins that are merged mined with Bitcoin? I don't actually know. I wonder if Namecoin is the only one. Do you know, Devoted, by chance?
I don't remember as of today. I knew a couple of years ago, but I haven't researched that ever since. But yeah, there have been quite a few.
Okay.
There have been quite a few.
Cool. So yeah, basically just saying that the security, because it's merged mined with Bitcoin, the assets are secure, even if there's a limited amount of people actually participating on the network, which for a provenance perspective, that's what you want. You don't care if people are using it. You just want to make sure that the blockchain's safe and there's not going to be a rollback or all the nodes go off to a degree. So yeah, my question then is, what's kind of next here, for Namecoin and, for some of these kind of historical assets. This is a conversation we've had before. I actually have had a conversation with a few different domain providers to try and get Namecoin assets listed on their marketplace, just from an exposure perspective. And there is interest there. I think some of these need to kind of build out their infrastructure a little bit better. But I think from the Emblem perspective, that's really our goal. Get it listed on other marketplaces, get the collection integrated into, like lending platforms or some of these kind of DeFi platforms. Of course, you need volume in the collection as well to capture, some of these kind of larger profile DeFi and NFTFi platforms. But as we've learned in this space, all it takes is really one catalyst. You take one person who comes in and buys a Twitter egg, who has a huge account, and all of you'll have a pretty deflated floor, which you see now, right? I think it's like 1 ETH is like the floor, where at one point it was up to like 15 ETH. Yeah. So you get one person come in and sweep like 10 of them, and it just like takes off again.
It's like, this is, I mean, just to frame it for everybody who doesn't remember what 2022 and 2021 were like there was no way you couldn't point people to anything. Collectors, there was no web page, there was no OpenSea page where you could look for a puny code or look for a Namecoin ID or whatever. It was all obviously Emblem open with thousands and thousands of NFTs, and very confusing, lots of scams. This is just a place I look at it, and we talked about this when we started. Jake and I started with Emblem Vault, with just giving a place for collectors to kind of coalesce around, where now you guys can tell the stories of how you began collecting and why and all that sort of stuff, and you can point people to it, right? It's like people can go and look at them, right? And just, it gives a hub to kind of, for communities to kind of rally around. And I think that's just really important.
Very, very important. Every day you back? Every day you back with us? You might be on mute. I can't tell.
Yeah.
Ruggy Rick Ruggin.
Oh man.
No worries, bro.
It's got to be it's probably your Wi-Fi at that point, because you're getting the like spacey, the spacey remarks. Unfortunate. That's okay though. No we do have the .id team up here though. Yeah, you're rugged, my friend. .id, are you up? Are you there? And do you have anything?
Yeah, still here.
What's good, bro? Would you love to share, the message of .id identities?
Yeah, I believe this is the second time I'm speaking regarding the Namecoin identities. The first time I spoke was in an interview with you. I think it's still available on the YouTube.
Yep.
Well, thanks for having us here again. Namecoin identities, actually, they were rediscovered just after Punicode. So I was involved from the first day in Punicode. I was not involved in the rediscovery. That's devoted in team, of course. But once the message was through, I was one of the earlier ones. I made a couple of mistakes, got only one during that time. But afterwards, I was contacted by a few people from South America. I still know them. And they said, why don't we just explore further? Because we saw that there were namespaces. Okay, so we have the D, we have ID, and we have P, and we have U, and we have Tor, we have a lot of them actually. But then they said the ID, it seems like they're trying to do something, and they found a few forum posts from Bitcoin Talk, which was the standard during that time, when Bitcoin and a few other chains were the only ones alive, meaning online or something. So they referred me to that one, and then I started searching, and we formed an entire community around it. I believe we have a couple of dozens of collectors. The supply is not that huge, similar to most of the Namecoin collections, except for .bit domains, of course, meaning TwitterX, Blockhead, even this one, Puny Codes. All of them, they don't have a very huge supply. It's still very rare, to be honest. But .bit domains, they have a large supply, even except for the year 2011, 2012. The supply rises as you go down further the years, of course. Namecoin identities, they are the precursor. They are like, they're proto ENS. These people, Kalahan Hank, he minted the first ID call on like May 31st, 2012. And the next day he announced it on like Bitcoin Talk forums, right? And he explained the whole procedure. He explained the whole purpose behind like having these identities minted. And it was to like recreate your digital identity on chain, where it's like, where nobody can confiscate it, where nobody can like modify it. Okay. So, and that's how the identities were born. And you can store information inside them. You can use them for login. There's a name ID service. It still works with some websites. So basically, you can use it as sign in with Ethereum, but this goes way further. And of course, it did not get the adoption at that time. So mostly we have the collector's aspect to it, right? So these are the ancient ENS, Ethereum name service, and supply is not that large. These are referred by Vitalik Buterin as non-fungible assets in the Ethereum white paper. I believe a couple of other people also reference the same one. Usually we do, and I think someone like, I think it was like Arcube who referred them to the Ethereum white paper. This is like one thing which we use as like an evidence that these were considered NFTs back then also. You can always debate about the distinction between assets and tokens, but as long as like ENS is considered as an NFT, even though they expire after some time, you can still consider Namecoin assets as NFTs.
Yeah.
Like in case you don't want them to expire, they won't expire. The only way Namecoin assets expire is if you let them. If you keep renewing that, you can hold on to them indefinitely. I mean, there's no problem. And the analogy that I personally use, and I've used it like in so many online debates on Twitter, is like you're getting a new title deed each time, like the ownership changes, you're getting a new title deed to the same old historical castle. Meaning the castle can change hands, but it's still the same castle. You can have a new owner, but that's about it. Because the Namecoin assets, they're centered around the key value here, right? So we have the key, and the Namecoin blockchain, it maintains a very complete record of the domain system. Like, okay, you have a domain name, let's say you have ID card. So all the owners during that time, they are mentioned. I mean, each time somebody new gets listed, the old history is not deleted, meaning the system is designed around these things.
Yeah. I completely agree. The interesting thing, if you go to the Identities website, you can see that as you mentioned, there's literally, I think, a few dozen websites that you can still actually use your identity to log into. And
you can definitely,
yeah, which makes it really cool. And also it's the second, if I believe, the second, I guess you could call it an asset protocol on Namecoin. You had D/, which is .bit, and then you had ID/, which was right after. And then thereafter, you saw just this plethora of them pop up, like U/ and I think there's a few like Z or something like that. We do have a question in the live stream, and there's a handful of people debating domains here. It's kind of funny to watch this. Somebody says, is there something in common between Namecoin and BTC protocols, Atomicals Runes, BRC20? What's the difference? So Namecoin is the first altcoin. It was created in 2011, so it was actually a fork of Bitcoin. And the whole idea of it was to create decentralized domains. This was actually proposed, or maybe not proposed, but Satoshi was part of this ongoing conversation. And he is the one, or they are the one who said we should fork Bitcoin to create this decentralized, asset protocol or asset issuance protocol for domains. And so .bit was the end of it, which was for just decentralized websites. And then as .id explained, then people, just as crypto always does, said, oh, what else can I use this for? So they created then ID/, which was kind of like what with ENS, like login with ENS would be like the precursor to that. And then in 2014, people figured out how to inscribe images, or not inscribe, like register images. So then Mr. Planet Prophet says, who is this .id? They imitated Munib's. Munib's actually the person who created it. Adam, would you like to explain that?
Well, I mean, just you know, Munib was like kind of the first like entrepreneur who was like, well, these guys are doing this. Let's do something with, and this is, it's kind of even the idea of, hey, the first thing Satoshi and all these kind of OGs were thinking about was decentralized URLs, basically. It's kind of crazy, right? It's like, what? That was the first thing you thought about, but obviously identity, I mean, even to this day, identity is this ball of wax which we're trying to figure out online, and how do you own it, right? And I've proposed a number of times, the best thing we've come up with in the crypto space are .eth names and PFP pictures, right? Give you the most solid like identity. But you know, look, guys have been thinking about this now, obviously since 2011, and we are still just really early in this process of figuring this stuff out. And Munib, you know, to his credit, was very early in this game, and obviously he's pivoted a couple times now to what he thinks will be bigger. And you know, an L2 on Bitcoin, you know, to his credit, is, you know, people are waking up to, wow, this is a great idea. It's like Munib saw this, and obviously, you know, Stacks lives now because of him. But he was very early in this process of what's going to be important. What are these assets? How do you own these digital assets? What's going to be the things that are important? And, you know, we're still figuring that shit out, man. We're still very early in this process of figuring out, you know, what we need this for. And, you know, Namecoin just has this awesome place in that process.
And a side note here before I go over to or pass it over to Devoted, some of the very early NFT entrepreneurs all ended up doing things incredibly early. One of the other guys that comes to mind was on Bitcoin that created a scribe. Adam, what was his name?
Oh geez, man.
That created a scribe.
I'll think of it in a second. Yeah, but
I forget what his name is. It'll come to mind. He created basically a Bitcoin NFT minting platform in 2013 on Bitcoin, and then left it to create basically decentralized AI computation in 2015. That's called Ocean Protocol, which I believe he still works on today, right? And now this idea is manifested almost 10 years later, where you see, I just saw yesterday some sort of AI decentralized blockchain for computation just raised like $100 million the other day.
yeah.
And these kind of people were thinking about this and even pursued it literally 10 years ago, where Munib created one name, which was to register basically NFTs on Namecoin. He then spun that into Blockstack, which then got spun into Stacks.
Trent McConaughey. I think I've had him on my pod, and I don't know. I think you may have had him.
I have too, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Obviously, super giga brain. Was super early. Obviously, a scribe. If any of you guys can figure out how to bring a scribe assets back, there's some incredible stuff that got lost on a scribe. That's probably never going to be able to be brought back, because he, at least as Trent, you know, maybe Trent needs to like die and one of his kids finds like the old hard drive which has, you know, the inscribed database stored on it or something. But yeah, Trent, obviously one of these early super giga brains who, you know, was too early to NFTs, right? I mean, obviously. But yeah, just incredible history there too.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it just comes down to crypto that, you know, a lot of these people are always too early. And you really just got to survive. I would say Munib and Trent are both of the two of those people who are here for really, you know, unique ideas, NFTs on Bitcoin, NFTs on Namecoin, and then stuck around and still have survived to this day. Obviously, Stacks is much more popular than Ocean Protocol is, but you're starting to now see, you know, AI and blockchain start mixing, which was something that they were thinking about 10 years ago.
The AI, you know, they did a merge of their tokens with like another, and I want to say the token is like a multi-billion-dollar token.
Is this that super intelligence one or whatever?
AI, yeah, they basically merged what they were building into this AI company and merged their tokens, and it's like you know, they're leaning heavily into this AI blockchain thesis, which again may be too early for that as well. You know, we'll have to see how that plays out, man.
Ooh, what's up, Devoted?
Yeah, and so yeah, I was just wondering myself if the ascribe assets, if someone was able to retrieve them or not. But well, I didn't answer the question.
Yeah, no, it basically, to the TLDR is they were stored on their server, and when they closed down ascribe for legal reasons. They gave everybody time to, in theory, take them off. Almost nobody did, including like the X copies and all this sort of stuff. Nobody took them off. And so when they closed for legal reasons, he swears up and down they deleted all records of the files. So yeah.
Yeah, all right. So thanks a lot for letting me know. And yeah, as Jake was talking about, like, so the as far as the developments goes on Namecoin, so a few weeks or maybe a couple of months ago, there was the first mobile app for the Namecoin wallet was launched. Like, as of right now, it's just launched on the Apple ecosystem. Maybe it will be launched on the Android ecosystem in maybe a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks. I'm not sure on the timeline of that. But yeah, the first Namecoin wallet was launched some time ago for mobile. And as of right now, that as far as the devs are concerned, they're still working on Namecoin. Like, the a browser extension was just, I guess, the beta version of the browser extension was just launched, which you can use to open up a .bit domains directly onto your browser. So otherwise, you can't just basically open up a .bit domain like you do on your browser, like you basically open up a normal .com domain. But yeah, that's out in the beta version. If I remember correctly, I had shared an announcement of it a couple of months ago, and the main version of it will be launched soon too. And the other thing, I had a question from Hallucifile for the Emblem Walls team. And to everyone who doesn't know, Hallucifile, back in like the 2000, he's like basically an OG artist, you could say. And he also created multiple rare pepes around the 2016 to 17-18 era. And he was also artist for the Punicos collection. So obviously it's a decentralized collection, but back in 2014 and 15, he created, I guess, about 900 or 950 or something Punicodes. And he said like it was one of the art experiments he did, and he was basically creating different types of emojis and a collection of emojis, etc. And he was trying to portray a story via those very emojis, and he was also going to host websites for them, etc. So he was also a really big, you could say, experimenter as far as the Pinicodes collection is concerned. And he like basically asked a question and wanted, he isn't able to come up to the space right now, and he has the basically our a private DAO chat to ask for someone to ask this question. So he was wondering if the commissions from the sales are for the artist or the DAO for the particular collections, if that option is going to be enabled within the Emblem Vaults moving forward. I guess it was discussed in 2022 or 2023, if I remember correctly.
So what was the end part?
Question about if artist royalties are going to be enabled for Punicodes.
Oh, it's a really tough debate. Emblem, when it comes, we've discussed royalties with multiple people about this. There's a business decision behind it, and then there's also like an artist supporting decision. And Emblem's in a unique situation where we now have a marketplace, but we also have our smart contracts that exist on every other marketplace as well. So from that perspective, right, if we enlist royalties on our marketplace, then people just go buy them on a different marketplace where our smart contracts already exist, because it is, right, because Emblem's an open and permissionless ecosystem. And so if we enlist artist royalties on, let's say, Punicodes or on Rare Pepe, then there has to be, you have to start doing it for everybody else. And because we have collections from 15 different protocols, you're now competing with multiple marketplaces, native marketplaces across all of these different chains. And for us to succeed, you have to kind of have this blanket approach to most of it. It's still something we're considering. Right now, it's too early to really make a decision on that, because we're still building out Emblem markets and we're still looking for user adoption. Once there's some adoption, I would say, we could consider it. But at this time, we're not adding royalties to the marketplace ourselves. When you go to the other marketplaces, right, like OpenSea, Luxor, etc., royalties are optional across the board. There's not any marketplace that has enforced royalties outside of Magic Eden. And it's unfortunate this is a situation, but when was the last time a sale happened on Magic Eden?
Yeah.
Right. And so we're just trying to be ultra competitive What this is right now, Emblem Markets has a 1% marketplace fee, which is lower than, you know, Magic Eden's 2% marketplace fee for Bitcoin. It's lower than OpenSea's 2.5% on Ethereum. You know, when we deploy on Solana and all these other chains, we have to really be competitive, not just on one single chain, but across all of the chains. So it's a tough decision, but right now we will not be adding any.
Yeah, so I was also like, I believe like at this point, there's just the idea of enforcing royalties is basically just a stupid business decision or any sort of decision you would like to call it. But yeah, just adding in the optional extra, if anyone would like to pay their little contribution to the artists and maybe the DAO of the particular project. So if that can be added, then great. Otherwise, like I wasn't referencing to enforcing the royalties onto the collections.
Yeah, kind of like a tipping feature. There are a few people who've asked us about that as well. We were recently talking with one artist who has a collection with us, where he had told us that he wants the optional royalty, but he has this like social contract with his community to where he gets about 50% of the people who do pay royalties of some nature because of kind of his social contract with his community. So we'll try to take that case by case basis. But it'll definitely have to happen after Emblem scales. Because we're gonna have a lot of stuff coming out here at the end of the year, and we're still a very small team of 5 people. So we can only take on a handful of things at a time. And for us right now, the goal is to literally survive, survive and grow, right? Because this has been a year-long process of, you know, not much sales. So yeah, that's the priority. But optional royalties would be a cool idea. We could tackle that here in the future. Outside of that, I suppose we could kind of wrap it up here. This is one of the most active live stream chats that I've seen in a little while. So people are loving the domain conversation, and no Namecoin here, and see people talking about Web2 domains, Web3 domains, blockheads, unstoppable domains, etc. So cool conversation there. Appreciate everyone for coming on and joining us in the Namecoin space. It had been quite a long time, and excited to, you know, share and celebrate that we've now migrated everything over. We are aware of, you know, the confliction, or maybe there's some puny codes that could be .bits, some .bits could be puny codes. I'm sure it's the same with a few other collections, and we have this same issue with some counterparty collections as well. So once we enable jumping and intra jumping, so jumping, again, for those who aren't aware, would be like taking your rare Pepe vault on Ethereum to Solana, or taking your, you know, Namecoin puny code to Blast or to Bitcoin when you deploy on Bitcoin. Or this other idea of collection jumping, where if you have a puny code that's a .bit, you're able to move those assets, if you're the owner, between which collection that you prefer. Or if you have a Saratobi Pepe and you want it in the Saratobi collection or in the rare Pepe collection, you know, you could go back and forth between that. I will take one last attempt at Everyday, man. Maybe we fix the Wi-Fi.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, hey, man, that was the hardest drug. That was like an industrial drug, like one of those, you know, like a 1970s office rug, where it's just like, man, that was. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're good, bro.
So I had like a quick story. I didn't hear anybody talk about it, but my only interaction with what I guess would be Namecoin or .bit was through a company. I think I found them through ChangeTip. Does anybody remember ChangeTip? They were like a Bitcoin layer 2, and you could send tips on Twitter and on Reddit. And anyway, there was this company called Netki, Netki. And I actually looked them up at the start of the space. They're still around, but you could register a wallet. So it was like wallet.name.bit. So they must have been using that kind of Namecoin.bit service. And obviously I went back and I actually looked at some of the browsers that you guys pointed to, and I found that domain, and it expired like, you know, registered 2015, expired 2016. But that was just a layer of the history that I don't know whether the historical folks have looked at that, but Netkey's still around, and I guess there's a bunch of those wallet.name.bit addresses that expired or nobody's using. So anyway, that was my interaction with it.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that. Adam, are you familiar with it?
I haven't heard about that. That's really cool.
There's so many mysteries on Namecoin, and that's what it comes down to at the end of the day, right? If you're just looking at the Namecoin blockchain without having any type of outside details, right? Like what Chainleft was talking about earlier. Most of the stuff, it would just look like random kind of assortments. And then once you start using some of the forums, right? Like Bitcoin Talk or Reddit, or just stumbling across a website or a blog post that then leads you to all these other links, and you can start pairing the history or the story with the token. And that's where the value is built. I'm sure there's still, right? The archaeological digs has really moved, seemed like, to meme coins this year, reviving. Adam started it with Bell's coin, and I think there's like a handful of other ones that I've seen pop up now. There's still a lot more that I'm assuming will probably pop up into fruition whenever the narrative is right.
If you want to go down the ascribe rabbit hole and try to help me dig that up somehow, happy to chat in DMs, man. It is one of those out there that's like, if you could ever bring back those X copies and stuff, there would be incredible value there for sure.
I believe the X copy said he minted on ascribe in like 2015 or something.
Yeah.
Like it would be like the de facto earliest X copy asset ever.
It would be unbelievable.
It's like 1,000 ETH just waiting there.
Literally just sitting there. Closet. We know he kept a copy, bro. We know it for sure, but it's probably not gonna be found.
Oh man, the ultimate pain. Maybe one of these days, right? That gives me the nostalgia of exploring like Next Coin, and I forget some of the other weird ones. There's like Emmercoin that we went through, and Data Coin. Some of these weird ones. There's more to be found. Monkey Coin, I think, was one of them at some point.
You guys remember Scott Coin?
No,
I've never heard of that.
I'll go look it up. Scott Coin. People are still trading that.
Oh no way.
Does it have NFTs? That's the question.
Yeah,
it has an icon. That's the art. It has an icon.
Scott Coin. Yeah, those are the early days. Well, again, appreciate everyone for coming on, having this fun conversation. For those that aren't aware, although I think it's the most regulars that are here, Adam, myself, and Chris, we work at Emblem Vault, the leading cross-chain NFT protocol. We host the show Tuesday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Next week, we have a full slate on the docket. On Tuesday, we're talking with the Bitcoin OS team, diving into this world of execution layers that are surfacing here. On Wednesday, we're talking with BTC, somebody who's trying to build a prediction market on Bitcoin. And then on Thursday, we have our town hall. I'll give you all of the updates surrounding migration. I believe we have less than 10,000 assets to migrate still. So we're getting really down to the wire here. And then, of course, we have some things to do after that. And we'll share some updates with Op 900,000, which will be our campaign starting here, multi-year campaign starting here in the next few months. Until then, guys, everyone, really enjoy your Thursday, enjoy your weekend, have a lot of time. Check your Namecoin assets. If you see any issues, then please just reach out to us on Discord and open a support ticket. Until then, we'll see you guys out there in the Twitter sphere. Have a good one.